Elias Cade had learned long ago that survival on the scrap world of Vera 9 was a game of patience and observation. The planet was little more than a rocky desert, dotted with towering heaps of twisted metal and shattered warships from battles long forgotten. Smoke still curled from some of the newer wrecks, rising like ghosts into the violet sky. Most scavengers had left the place years ago, either dead, too slow, or bold enough to be caught by the roving security drones. Elias, however, thrived here, moving carefully between metal towers as if he were a predator stalking prey. His hands were blackened with grime, and his boots crunched against shards of metal and glass as he picked his way through a particularly large heap. He was searching for anything valuable, scrap, old tech, wiring, even pieces of armor that might fetch a few credits if he sold them to traders on the outer rim. The wind carried the tang of rust and burning fuel. Despite the danger, Elias loved the quiet. Out here, the world didn't demand much from you besides alertness, and in the chaos of the scrap, you could disappear if you needed. That day, he had been climbing a heap of scorched hulls from a battle that had destroyed hundreds of vessels. He had collected a few small items, a cracked helmet, a panel of armor plating, and some tools that looked nearly new. None of it was much, but it would help him survive another week. As he sifted through a pile of warped metal, something dark and unusual caught his eye. It was a piece of armor, wedged between the remnants of two shattered ships. At first, it seemed like just another scrap, but the contours and design were unlike anything he had seen. Smooth black alloy reflected the dull light of the twin suns. The armor was full body, designed to fit a human perfectly, but with enhancements that made it clear it wasn't for ordinary use. There were markings etched into it, symbols that pulsed faintly with light, as though the armor had a heartbeat of its own. Elias felt an almost magnetic pull toward it. His fingers itched to touch it. He brushed away the dust and soot covering the chest plate. The metal was surprisingly warm. He ran a hand over the arm gauntlets and felt a subtle vibration, like the armor was waking up. For a moment, he imagined himself wearing it, not as a scavenger, but as someone powerful, unstoppable. A flicker of thought crossed his mind. This was dangerous and yet irresistible. Something about it called to him, whispering promises of strength he had never known. Elias lifted the helmet, examining the interior. It was lined with memory fibers and neural sensors, technology far beyond anything civilian scavengers were allowed to touch. His heart raced. He knew he should leave it, report it to someone, or destroy it. Instead, he carefully placed it under his arm, a strange sense of excitement pushing him forward. Just as he lifted the chest plate, a voice cut through the silence, low and cold. "Put it back, or you're next." The figure carried a long weapon, a sleek rifle with strange energy coils, and his stance was calm but threatening. Elias' first thought was that the man was just a scavenger trying to scare him, but something about the aura of danger around him made Elias' stomach tighten. I didn't take anything yet," Elias stammered, trying to sound casual, though his voice betrayed him. "I just found it." A faint blue light pulsed across the chest plate, and he felt a strange warmth spread through his palms. The armor almost seemed to be expecting him. Curiosity overcame fear. He reached for the chest plate again, and the armor suddenly emitted a soft hum. The sensors along the arm plates glowed brighter, and the faint symbols on the surface began to shine in intricate patterns. Elias felt a jolt run through his fingers as if the armor was scanning him, learning him. He stumbled back slightly, alarmed, but the pull to keep touching it was stronger than ever. "You shouldn't," the man said, stepping closer. His voice was sharper now, dangerous. "It chooses who wears it. It doesn't choose foolish scavengers." "I just found it," he said, trying to keep the trembling out of his voice. Yet he knew he wasn't just speaking to a man, he was speaking to a predator, one who could strike at any moment. The man's eyes narrowed, and he shifted his weight slightly, the weapon at the ready. Before Elias could react, the armor activated fully. Lights flared along the seams, a soft hum escalating into a steady rhythm. The chest plate opened slightly, almost inviting him to step inside. And without thinking, Elias slid his arms into the gauntlets and lifted the chest piece over his shoulders. The armor fit him like it had been made for him. A helmet extended itself toward his head, aligning perfectly with his vision, almost as if it knew his every move before he did. The man's expression changed suddenly. "Impossible," he whispered and raised his weapon. But as he aimed, the armor reacted. Panels shifted, energy flared along the arms, and before Elias fully understood what was happening, the weapon was thrown from the man's hands with a controlled pulse of force. He fell back several meters, shocked and unhurt, and the armor hummed as though celebrating. Elias stared at the man, panic and awe battling within him. The voice from the armor spoke then, calm and authoritative, yet alien in tone. Compatible, target neutralized, you are ready. It shouldn't, human. The man took a step forward, then froze, as though unsure if he should attack or flee. You don't understand what you hold, he said. That armor, it belongs to the last of the human mercenaries. It was made to dominate entire battlefields. If it chooses you, it will make you a target. Every empire, every faction, they will hunt you. I just found it on a scrap heap, he whispered. I didn't ask for this. The armor wasn't just a suit of protection, it was alive. It responded to him, read him, moved with him. He could feel the strength of it in his muscles, the way it anticipated movement before he made it. For the first time, he felt capable of doing things he never thought possible. I can't, Elias said quietly. I don't want to. Because you've just made yourself a target. For every mercenary, every hunter, and every empire that knows what that armor can do. He raised his hands in surrender, and then vanished into the shifting shadows of the scrap heap, leaving Elias alone with the armor and a strange, tingling awareness that the universe had just shifted in ways he could not yet understand. Elias looked down at the armor, feeling the weight of it, both literal and metaphorical. The hum of energy seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat. He had no idea who the mercenary had been or why the armor had chosen him. All he knew was that from this moment forward, his life was no longer his own. Something ancient, powerful, and terrifying had awakened, and it had chosen him. And in the distance, beyond the mountains of scrap and metal, he felt the faint pulse of sensors tracking him, alien eyes that had sensed the activation of the armor, and he realized he was no longer just a scavenger. He was something else, something that might not survive the attention it would now draw. But for the first time, he also felt ready. The wind shifted again, carrying the smell of burnt circuits and ozone. Elias took a deep breath, stepping fully into the armor, feeling it settle over his body like a second skin. He knew he couldn't go back to the life he had before. The scrap heap was now a starting point, not a hiding place. Somewhere out there, the voice had warned him he would face death. And somewhere out there, the universe had begun to take notice. Elias Cade, scavenger, was gone. In his place stood the beginning of something new, a human chosen by a mercenary's armor, a force the galaxy had long thought extinct. Elias Cade had barely taken a step away from the scrap heap when he realized the gravity of what had just happened. The armor wrapped around him wasn't just a protective shell, it was alive. Every movement, every twitch of a finger seemed amplified, enhanced. He could feel the hum of energy coursing through the metal plates, responding to his thoughts before he fully formed them. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly alien all at once. He stumbled across the jagged metal field, trying to find some sense of normality. But there was none. Each twisted hull, each shattered robot, every piece of scrap whispered a warning. Someone or something was watching him. The hunter's voice from earlier echoed in his mind, "Put it back or you're next." That warning wasn't just words. Elias understood instinctively that this was a man who had faced death countless times and meant every syllable. The armor pulsed again, softly this time, like it was reassuring him. Elias pressed a hand against the chest plate, feeling warmth and vibration spread through his torso. A voice, metallic but calm, spoke directly inside his mind. "Do not fear, you are compatible. Your choices define the activation. You are ready." He had never been a soldier, never fought in any war, yet here he was, wearing a piece of human history so lethal it had terrified entire alien fleets. He took a deep breath and tried to move forward, though each step made him feel like a predator being tracked by countless invisible eyes. He hadn't gone far when movement caught his eye. Between two enormous metal hulls, he spotted the hunter from before. The man's stance was low, careful, calculating. He held his weapon, but he didn't attack. He was waiting. Elias froze, unsure what to do. Every instinct screamed to run, but the armor responded first. Panels shifted on his arms, bracing him, strengthening his legs. It seemed to anticipate the hunter's next move. The hunter's voice came again, steady, commanding. "Step aside, scavenger. That armor is not for you. Surrender it now." That armor was worn by the last of the human mercenaries, a force that almost destroyed entire fleets. Every empire, every faction that knows of it would see you dead the moment they find you. He glanced down at the armor, still pulsing faintly, and felt an undeniable surge of power in his limbs. Despite the fear, a strange confidence bubbled within him. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel weak or defenseless. The hunter stepped forward, cautious. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked. The armor is not just a weapon, it adapts, it learns. In the wrong hands, it can wipe out entire cities, entire fleets, entire systems. And now so have they. From above, the broken hull of an old transport ship shifted, and a drone, sleek black with glimmering red sensors, descended, its engines humming ominously. Elias' heart leapt. He had survived the scrap heap for years, but he had never seen one like this. The armor reacted instantly, glowing with a bright blue light. Panels along his arms extended slightly, energy pulses arcing across the surface. The drone fired. Elias felt a shockwave of energy slam into him, but the armor absorbed it, protecting him completely. The force sent him stumbling backward, but he remained standing. His pulse raced, a mix of adrenaline and disbelief. The hunter fired at the drone, but it moved too fast, weaving and dodging with impossible precision. "You're not ready for this," the hunter shouted. "Run now, it will target you until it finds you." He raised his arms instinctively, and the armor responded, firing an energy pulse that struck the drone midair. Sparks and shards of metal flew, and the drone exploded in a shower of fragments. The hunter took a step back, eyes wide. "Impossible," he whispered. It should not respond like that." The sky seemed to fill with them, swarming like metallic locusts. He could hear the soft hum of the armor's systems calculating, adapting, preparing. "Move," the armor instructed in his mind. "Defend, survive." He realized he could predict the drone's movements almost as quickly as they moved. The hunter tried to fight alongside him, but it became clear. The armor was teaching Elias to act, to respond, to fight in ways he had never imagined. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed in a blur of motion and energy. When the last drone fell in a smoking heap of shattered circuits, Elias stood panting. The armor powered down slightly, returning to a calmer glow. The hunter approached, cautious now. "You survived," he said. "Barely, but you are learning. That is the beginning. If you survive what comes next, you will understand why this armor chooses humans. It's not about you, it's about compatibility. The armor senses humans who can adapt, who can survive, who can make choices under pressure. It doesn't choose blindly. You are exceptional, or at least capable. That is why it chose you, but being chosen is not a gift, it is a burden. Every life you save, every action you take, it will draw attention." The hunter stepped closer. "You must leave Vera 9. Go to the outer rim, find the hidden human archives. Learn what the armor is, what it was designed to do. Knowledge is survival. Without it, you are a target and you will die." The hunter gave him a final, piercing look. "Remember this, the armor does not follow orders, it follows will. Do not mistake it for a weapon you control. It is a weapon that will reflect your choices. Your courage, your fear, your decisions, all will define the outcome. Use it wisely or it will destroy you." Elias stood alone once more, the hum of the armor softening around him. He took a deep breath and looked toward the horizon. Beyond the distant mountains of metal and dust, beyond the twin suns of Vera 9, there was a galaxy that had once feared humans, a galaxy that would soon notice him. For the first time in his life, Elias understood one simple truth. He was no longer a scavenger. He had been chosen, marked by history, empowered by a legacy he barely understood. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and filled with enemies he had yet to meet. And yet a spark of determination ignited within him. He would survive. He would learn. He would adapt. And when the galaxy came to hunt him, he would show them why humans were not to be underestimated. The armor whispered again in his mind, calm and patient. "We begin," it said, "and the universe will learn." And somewhere, far beyond the horizon, forces that had long hunted humans began to stir. They would not wait long. Elias Cade moved through the jagged landscape of Vera 9 with a strange sense of purpose. The twin suns burned hot, casting long shadows over the mountains of metal that had once been the instruments of war. Despite the beauty of the alien world, there was danger in every shadow, and Elias could feel it. Every movement of the wind, every glint of metal caught by sunlight seemed like a warning, yet he no longer felt helpless. The armor wrapped around him like a second skin, alive and intelligent, responding to his every thought and movement. The voice of the armor remained calm in his mind. "You must understand what you carry, Elias. Your survival depends on knowledge. Your choices will define how the universe remembers humans." He knew he needed answers. He needed to know why humans had been feared, why this armor existed, and what it meant that it had chosen him. The hunter's warning echoed in his mind. "Go to the outer rim, find the hidden human archives, learn what the armor is, learn what it was designed to do." Elias didn't know where the archives were, but he had heard stories. There were whispers among the few humans left scattered across the galaxy, records and secrets hidden in remote colonies, places beyond the reach of alien empires. If he could find them, he might understand the armor, and perhaps even himself. He began walking toward the distant horizon, his boots crunching over metal and dust. The armor shifted with him, panels moving subtly to protect and enhance his movement. Each step was effortless, each leap over jagged scrap easy and precise. Elias realized with a mixture of fear and wonder that the armor was teaching him. It was not just a weapon, it was a mentor, guiding him to think faster, move smarter, survive. As the suns dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of red and orange, Elias reached the remains of an old transport hub, long abandoned and half buried in rubble. He found a makeshift shelter, the skeletal remains of a building that had once been a hub for travelers and merchants. Here, he would rest, plan, and gather strength for the journey ahead. That night, as Elias slept under the broken roof, the armor continued its lessons. Visions and memories flashed in his mind, like recordings embedded in its neural core. He saw humans as they had never been seen before, warriors and survivors, cunning and relentless. The images were harsh but mesmerizing. He watched fleets of alien ships crumble under human tactics, saw mercenaries alone wiping out entire squads with precise strikes, and understood at last why humanity had been feared. The armor spoke again. Humans were underestimated. They were once enslaved, hunted, and nearly destroyed. In response, they adapted. They became masters of survival and war. Every weapon, every strategy, every battle was a lesson, and they learned quickly. He understood now why the armor had chosen him, not because he was the strongest, but because he could adapt, survive, and make decisions in the chaos of battle. Morning came, and with it, new challenges. As Elias began walking again, he noticed movement in the distance. Alien patrols, sleek and advanced, were scanning the terrain. Their ships glinted in the morning light, small but deadly, armed with energy weapons designed to track and eliminate targets. Elias froze, his heart pounding. He had expected this. He had been warned. But now, with the armor guiding him, he felt something he had never felt before, readiness. The armor hummed softly. "They are detecting you. Move carefully. Observe." Learned. Minutes passed like hours as the patrols scanned the area. One of the alien ships hovered dangerously close, its sensors sweeping over him. Elias held his breath, feeling the armor's energy flow through him, guiding his focus, heightening his senses. He realized then that this armor was more than protection. It was a link to the human legacy of survival and combat, a reminder that humans had once dominated not through strength alone, but through intelligence, adaptability, and courage. The patrol finally moved on, leaving Elias alone once more. He exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and exhilaration. "That was close," he whispered, though the armor already knew his thoughts. "Close is relative," it replied. "You survived, that is what matters. Survival is not luck, Elias, it is choice, skill, and awareness. Remember this. Every encounter will test you. Every threat will teach you." He learned of human fleets that had outmaneuvered enemies far superior in number and firepower, of mercenaries who had fought alone against entire armies and survived. Elias understood now why the galaxy had feared humans. They were not invincible in strength, but they were unmatched in adaptability, resilience, and willpower. The armor had chosen him not because of luck, but because it had recognized the same traits in him. And now, with its guidance, he was beginning to become the human it had been designed for, a master of survival, strategy, and combat. Days passed, and Elias traveled further from the scrap heap, leaving the familiar ruins behind. He encountered more alien patrols, more remnants of war, and more evidence of civilizations long forgotten. Each encounter tested him, each challenge honed his instincts, and each victory built his confidence. He began to understand the armor's subtleties, how it shifted weight to enhance balance, how energy pulses could be used for offense or defense, how its neural interface allowed him to anticipate threats before they fully materialized. One evening, as he rested in the shadow of a collapsed starport, Elias reflected on how far he had come. The armor was no longer just a tool, it was part of him. It moved as he moved, thought as he thought, and protected him with unwavering precision. He realized that the universe would soon take notice. If humans had once been feared, he would be a reminder of that legacy, but with that realization came fear. He was no longer just a scavenger, he had become a target. The hunter's words echoed in his mind. Every empire, every faction that knows what that armor can do will see you dead the moment they find you. Elias knew that this was not idle threat. The armor had activated something in the galaxy, a beacon that would draw attention, both friendly and hostile. The next morning, Elias encountered a small settlement under attack by alien enforcers. The humans in the settlement were defenseless, terrified, and desperate. Without thinking, he engaged. The armor guided him flawlessly. Energy pulses struck with precision, panels shifted to deflect incoming fire, and he moved with speed and agility he had never known. Within moments, the attackers were either incapacitated or fleeing. The villagers stared in awe, whispering tales of a human mercenary reborn. Elias helped them rebuild what he could, sharing knowledge from the data cores he had accessed. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose beyond survival. Humans had always been underestimated, and now he was proving that they could rise again, not through conquest, but through courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect. That night, as he camped outside the settlement, the armor spoke in his mind once more. "You are learning. You are adapting. Humans were never the strongest by number or weapon, but by resolve. You embody that now. And soon, the galaxy will remember why it feared us." He had the armor, yes, but more importantly, he had the courage, determination, and human will that made the armor truly lethal. The stars above Vera 9 seemed to shine brighter as he stared at them. Somewhere out there, across countless systems, forces that had long feared humans were stirring. They would come for him, seeking the armor, seeking the human who had been chosen. And when they did, Elias would be ready, because humans survived, humans adapted, humans fought when forced. And now a new chapter of that legacy had begun, with Elias Cade as its unlikely herald. And far beyond the horizon, the universe began to take notice. Elias Cade traveled farther into the frontier of space than he had ever imagined. The twin suns of Vera 9 had long since dipped below the horizon, leaving the world bathed in a pale violet twilight. His boots crunched across a field of jagged metal, remnants of war long forgotten by everyone but scavengers and the few survivors who whispered about humanity's past. The armor wrapped around him felt lighter now, as if it had become part of his body. It moved with him, anticipating his motions, predicting threats before they arrived. Elias was no longer just a scavenger. He was becoming a force that the galaxy would soon notice. The silence of the desert was broken by a distant hum. It grew louder, mechanical, and deliberate, until the ground beneath his feet seemed to vibrate. Elias paused, crouching behind the remnants of a collapsed warship. Far on the horizon, he could see a fleet approaching, a patrol of alien ships unlike anything he had encountered before. Sleek, angular, and bristling with energy weapons, they moved with coordination and precision, scanning the planet's surface for signs of life. The armor hummed softly in his mind. "They are aware of you. They have detected the activation of your armor. You must prepare, Elias." Survival depends on understanding, anticipation, and action. Every story he had read, every lesson the armor had shown him, every record of human mercenaries whispered through his mind. Humans had survived because they adapted. Humans had fought because they refused to be conquered. Now he would have to live up to that legacy. The first ship descended, firing an energy pulse that shook the ground near him. Elias rolled instinctively, and the armor responded automatically, panels shifting to absorb the impact. The blast left a crater, and shards of metal flew into the air. He could feel the power coursing through the armor, amplifying his reflexes, his strength, and his speed. He realized he was no longer running blindly. He was learning, adapting, becoming the human the armor had chosen. Another pulse came from the sky, aimed directly at him. He jumped, propelled by the armor's enhanced hydraulics, and landed behind a pile of scrap with perfect balance. The armor whispered guidance in his mind, subtle suggestions. Move left, anticipate the energy burst, strike when the opening appears. Elias followed instinctively, his thoughts synchronized with the machine. The alien ships fired again, relentless and coordinated. But Elias was faster, smarter. He used the terrain to his advantage, leaping from twisted metal beams, firing energy pulses from the gauntlets, deflecting shots with the armored panels. Each action was precise, calculated, and effective. The armor taught him, guided him, and protected him. He realized that humans had once fought entire fleets like this, not through numbers, not through brute force, but through cunning, adaptability, and fearlessness. The lead ship descended closer, its energy pulse scanning for him. Elias felt the pulse wash over the terrain, detecting his presence. He smiled grimly, realizing that the armor was predicting the ship's movements as well. He leapt into the air, propelled by the armor, and fired a concentrated energy blast at the ship's sensors. Sparks flew, and the ship faltered, its systems momentarily disrupted. From the sky, another vessel moved in, faster and more precise. Elias dodged, rolling across the jagged metal, the armor adjusting to each movement instantly. He could feel the alien pilot's focus, their surprise, their frustration as the scavenger seemed to vanish and reappear with impossible agility. The armor whispered encouragement. "You are capable. You are learning. You are human." The alien fleet was not here to kill him alone. They were here to study him, to understand the armor, and to determine what made him a threat. The galaxy feared human mercenaries because they were unpredictable, relentless, and adaptive. And now he was proving that fear was not misplaced. Hours seemed to pass as he fought, dodged, and struck. The alien ships coordinated, adjusted, and attacked in waves, but the armor adapted. Panels shifted to deflect blasts, energy pulses fired with precision, and Elias moved with a grace and speed that seemed almost superhuman. The battlefield became a blur of light, metal, and motion. For the first time, Elias understood the full scope of what the armor was capable of. When the last ship fell, crashing into the desert in a shower of sparks, Elias stood panting, the armor glowing softly around him. He had survived. He had adapted. He had fought and lived, and in doing so, he had begun to earn the legacy of humanity's greatest mercenaries. But victory came with its own burden. He could feel the galaxy's attention now far beyond Vera 9. Other fleets would come. Other hunters would track him. The armor had chosen him, but it had also marked him. Every faction that remembered humans or feared them would soon see him as a threat. And unlike before, he could no longer hide in the scrap heaps. He was a human reborn, a weapon in flesh and metal, and a target the galaxy would not forget. The hunter appeared again, emerging from the shadows of a broken warship. His expression was grave but respectful. "You survived," he said. "Barely, but you are learning. That armor, it is more than a weapon. It is a legacy, and you are now its bearer. The galaxy will hunt you, Elias, but if you survive, you will understand why humans were feared." He had begun to see it himself, not as a legend, not as history, but as a living, breathing reality. Humans were adaptable, relentless, and fearless when pushed. The armor had chosen him because he could embody that legacy, and now he would have to live up to it. The hunter stepped back, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You must leave Vera 9, go to the Outer Rim. Seek the archives, learn the strategies, the histories, the battles humans fought. Knowledge will protect you as much as the armor. Without it, you are only a target, not a warrior." They fought to survive, but also to protect. The scrap heap behind him was no longer a place of survival. It was the birthplace of something greater, something human, something unstoppable. He began walking again, moving toward the Outer Rim, guided by instinct, experience, and the whispers of the armor. Along the way, he discovered more signs of human ingenuity, hidden caches, data cores, and remnants of long-forgotten outposts. Each discovery added to his understanding, each lesson making him stronger, sharper, more aware. He realized that survival alone was not enough. Humans had survived through adaptation, intelligence, and courage. The armor was not a weapon to wield, it was a teacher, a mentor, and a reflection of human potential. It would amplify his abilities, yes, but it could not think for him. Only he could decide how to act, how to survive, and how to honor the legacy of the mercenaries who had once dominated the galaxy. As he traveled, Elias encountered more alien patrols, more tests of his skill and the armor's abilities. Each confrontation sharpened his reflexes, honed his instincts, and deepened his understanding of the human way of war, not for conquest, but for survival and protection. He began to feel the weight of history on his shoulders, the responsibility of being chosen, and the knowledge that every decision he made would define not just his life, but the memory of humanity in the galaxy. By the time he reached the outskirts of the Outer Rim, Elias was no longer the scavenger who had stumbled upon a suit of armor. He was a warrior, a protector, and a symbol of human resilience. The galaxy would soon learn that humans were not weak, not insignificant, and certainly not to be underestimated. And when it did, Elias Cade would be at the center, the living proof that humanity's greatest strength had always been its will to survive, adapt, and rise against impossible odds. The stars above the Outer Rim glimmered, distant and cold, yet full of possibility. Elias felt a thrill of anticipation. Somewhere out there, hidden among countless systems, lay the archives that would teach him everything he needed to know. The armor pulsed softly, a reminder of the bond they shared, of the power at his command, and of the legacy he had inherited. The universe was vast, full of enemies, challenges, and dangers. But Elias Cade, chosen by the armor, guided by human legacy, and strengthened by determination, was ready. The galaxy had awakened to humanity's return, and he would be the spark that reminded it why humans had once been feared. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the rim, fleets that had long hunted human mercenaries began to stir. They would not wait long. Elias Cade stood on the edge of a rocky plateau, staring out at the black void of space. The outer rim was quiet, but that silence was deceptive. He knew that across countless systems, eyes and sensors were watching, analyzing, and tracking him. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was a human chosen by a mercenary's armor, and the galaxy was beginning to remember why humans had once been feared. The armor hummed softly around him, alive, aware, ready. It was more than protection. It was power, guidance, and legacy all in one. For weeks, he had traveled toward the hidden archives, navigating hostile worlds, evading alien patrols, and learning the history and strategies of humanity's greatest mercenaries. Each lesson had honed his mind as much as the armor had honed his body. He had seen firsthand the ingenuity and resilience of humans, how they could turn even impossible odds into victories. Now Elias understood that the armor had chosen him not just because of skill, but because of his determination, courage, and adaptability. Ahead, on a barren planet at the rim of the galaxy, lay the archives. Hidden deep within a canyon system, built into the cliffside and shielded by centuries of secrecy, the facility contained records of battles, strategies, and human knowledge long thought lost. As Elias approached, he saw the first signs of intrusion. Alien drones patrolled the skies, scanning for movement. He crouched behind a jagged outcrop, feeling the armor pulse with awareness. "They have anticipated your path," the armor said. "The galaxy knows you exist. They seek to prevent knowledge from reaching you. Adapt, Elias, survive, protect." Using the armor's guidance, he moved with precision, slipping past sensors, disabling patrol drones with energy pulses, and using the terrain to mask his approach. Each move was deliberate, calculated, yet instinctive. The armor was no longer just responding to him. It was teaching him, amplifying his skills, and shaping him into a mercenary worthy of legend. Finally, he reached the entrance of the archives. Massive doors, scarred and weathered, stood between him and centuries of human knowledge. But before he could enter, alarms blared. Alien ships descended from the sky, faster and larger than any he had faced before. A fleet had been waiting, and it was here to stop him. Elias crouched behind cover as laser pulses cut through the rocky canyon. He could hear the hum of the armor, analyzing the battlefield, predicting trajectories, and calculating countermeasures. He realized that this battle would be different. He wasn't just surviving. He was defending humanity's legacy, protecting knowledge that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. He leapt from cover, propelled by the armor, firing energy pulses with precision that tore through the first wave of attackers. The alien ships adjusted, coordinating their attack, but Elias moved faster, anticipating their maneuvers. The armor enhanced his strength and speed, but his mind was the real weapon. He thought like a mercenary, strategized like a human who had survived wars that had long since faded into legend. As the battle raged, Elias realized the full scope of what he carried. The armor was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of human adaptability, ingenuity, and resilience. He could strike, evade, and defend simultaneously, blending movement and strategy in a way that made him nearly untouchable. He felt the pulse of the armor sync with his heartbeat, their connection complete. He was no longer just Elias Cade. He was humanity's return. The alien fleet pressed harder, deploying massive walkers and armored drones onto the surface. The canyon shook with each strike, dust and debris clouding the battlefield. Elias adapted instantly, leaping onto a boulder, sliding behind armored debris, and using the terrain to strike with precision. Each move was a lesson from history. The armor recalled tactics used by mercenaries who had once fought entire fleets alone. He realized that humans had survived not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, creativity, and the will to endure. Hours passed, but to Elias it felt like minutes. Every wave of attackers was met with calculated defense, every strike met with a counterattack. The armor guided him, but his choices shaped its actions. He began to see a pattern in the enemy fleet. Their movements were precise but predictable. Using this knowledge, he struck at their weak points, disrupting coordination and sending them retreating into chaos. Finally, as the last of the alien ships fell, silence returned to the canyon. Smoke and sparks drifted through the air, but Elias stood unscathed. He had survived the assault not through luck, but through skill, determination, and the will to fight when the odds seemed impossible. He felt the armor's hum soften, a quiet acknowledgement of success. He stepped toward the massive doors of the archives. With a thought, the panels shifted, unlocking the mechanisms and sliding the doors open. Inside, he found centuries of human history, strategy, and knowledge preserved in digital cores and physical records. Maps of star systems, battle reports, weapon designs, and personal logs of legendary mercenaries filled the space. Elias understood the gravity of what he held. This was humanity's memory, the lessons that had allowed humans to survive and thrive against overwhelming odds. As he accessed the records, he saw images of mercenaries in battle, alone against fleets, striking fear into empires that had underestimated humans. He read strategies that had allowed small forces to defeat massive armies, tactics that relied on ingenuity, speed, and adaptability rather than sheer numbers. He realized that the armor had chosen him not just to survive, but to continue that legacy. Humans were not invincible, but they were never defeated so long as they adapted and endured. A sudden warning flashed across the archive's sensors. The alien fleets had regrouped and were heading for the canyon in force. Elias knew that this was the final test. He had learned, adapted, and survived, but now he would face the galaxy's might directly. He drew a deep breath and let the armor hum around him, feeling the power and legacy merge with his own will. The battle began anew, larger and more intense than before. Alien ships descended, firing waves of energy that shook the canyon. Walkers and drones advanced, moving with lethal precision. Elias moved with the armor, faster and smarter than ever, turning defense into offense seamlessly. He struck with precision, using the terrain, the shadows, and the armor's energy systems to overwhelm the attackers. As he fought, Elias remembered the lessons of human history: adapt, endure, protect, survive. He realized that the galaxy had feared humans not because of the weapons we built, but because of the choices we made under pressure, the courage to act when all seemed lost. Each move he made reflected that legacy. Hours of battle passed, but Elias never wavered. The alien forces faltered, their coordination broken, their attacks repelled. He struck decisively, using the armor to disable key ships and disrupt communication among their ranks. Slowly, methodically, the enemy retreated. The canyon fell silent once more, the air thick with smoke and the scent of ozone. Elias stood among the ruins, battered but unbroken. He looked at the stars above, realizing that he had not just survived. He had proven the truth of human resilience. The armor whispered in his mind, calm and approving. "You are ready, Elias. Humanity is remembered not because of fear, but because of will, ingenuity, and courage. You embody that now." He transmitted a simple message, a warning and a promise. Humans do not seek war, but if it is forced upon us, we finish it. Aliens and humans alike whispered tales of a force that had returned, not for conquest, but to protect, to endure, and to survive. Elias stepped outside the archives, looking over the barren planet, the wreckage of alien ships, and the horizon beyond. He understood that this was only the beginning. He had become more than a scavenger, more than a human chosen by armor. He was a symbol, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength had always been its will to survive, its courage to adapt, and its ability to rise against impossible odds. The armor hummed softly, and Elias felt a calm certainty. He would continue to learn, to protect, and to fight when necessary. The galaxy would come to know humanity not through fear, but through respect for resilience, ingenuity, and courage. And somewhere in the shadows of distant systems, fleets that had hunted humans for centuries began to stir. But now they would face not scattered survivors, but a human who had chosen to embrace the legacy of his ancestors, a human who had learned to wield history itself as a weapon, a human who would remind the galaxy why it had once feared the name of humanity. Elias Cade, the scavenger turned mercenary, the human chosen by a living legacy of war and survival, stood ready. The stars above shone bright and infinite, and for the first time he felt the universe truly notice him. And he would not be ignored. Humans endured, humans adapted, humans rose, and now, through Elias, the galaxy remembered.